when you walk in, you have an ace in your pocket and you can be an ace. And when you're that ace in the room, it's really looking around and going, who needs help here?
Welcome to the STEM Career Coach, hosted by Donnie McClary. Whether you're starting out or stepping up, this is your guide to growing in STEM.
Thank you for joining us for this day's episode of the STEM Career Coach. Data Science Donnie here, and I've got a great episode for you today. We've got Andrew McMasters joining us for a very exciting session on leadership and the future of the workplace. Andrew, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, mate?
Thank you, Donnie, for having me on. I'm really glad to be able to be here and talk to everyone. My background is as an actor. So
I love
that
it.
is my undergraduate degree was in theater. I have a master's degree in drama. I ran a nonprofit theater in Seattle for 25 years. My joke I always say was I started the company in 1992 when I was 4 years old. And, yeah, right, exactly. And then I left in 2017 to hand it over to the next generation of nonprofit leaders. So during that time, it was both managing theater, working as an actor, and then I worked in high tech. I worked for Microsoft, Apple Computer, Cisco, Salesforce, a lot of high tech companies during that time as well in order to make ends meet. So kind of a little bit of both worlds, kind of had my feet in one
For
and
sure.
my feet in the other as well.
And I think a great first question would be, something that you've been doing for quite some time, probably as long as you can remember now. What is improv mindset? And how would you, explain that to the audience?
Yeah, Improv Mindset is the company I've launched after I left Jet City Improv, my company that I had founded, the theater company. And the purpose of it, to be honest, over the years, working in tech, one of the things that I was always doing was standing up in front of people and being able to explain difficult technology for a large crowd. And because I was comfortable being an actor in front of a large crowd, they would always have me do that. So after a while, I realized that the reason they had me doing it was because the people who had actually worked on it were too afraid to stand in front of people and talk about something they had spent 5 years of their lives developing. So I started thinking about it and going, what if I help them to be able to get on front of people? And what if I can help them communicate these difficult, tense ideas, these difficult, complex concepts? And then that kind of led to where I am now, which is where I work with companies all over the world. And the improv mindset, the idea came out of it because I was using those same exercises, games, ideas, lessons, concepts that I was training actors with in my theater. And I thought, well, how do I adapt them so that I can help people in all careers? And then that's how it came out. So when it kind of came to the idea of growth mindset and how you sort of shift from a fixed mindset, I thought, well, there's an improv mindset. How are you fully aware and ready for what happens next? And then where are you spontaneous and constantly curious and letting go of judgment and accepting whatever happens and building on it? So that's where the name came. And it's been great ever since. I love it. It's
It's
fascinating
catchy.
to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've actually worked a lot in tech. Like that's primarily the duration of my career. And
Yeah.
one thing I've really noticed is some of the best leaders, especially, within the technology domain, which is moving so fast, is that techno-functional aspect. Being able to understand or play the in between the people that are actually writing the lines of code and then the people that need to use this platform or product, and
Yeah.
being able to link the two, being able to have a very clear communication style so that everyone is on the same page is essentially almost all of the battle from what I've been told and all the candidates that I've been speaking with. And as you grow your career, what is the best way to kind of, make yourself stand out? It is through communicating. It is through thinking with your business hat on and not just, your product hat on or your technology hat. And I'm sure this is exactly what you've been seeing especially through the names that you've worked with in your career.
Yeah, and also not just the business hat, the technology hat, the leader hat. It's the storyteller hat. I work with a lot of
100%.
people who are entrepreneurs who have started their own startup and they've got this great concept and they've spent a lot of time, sitting down and coding and putting it together.
Oh
And that's
yeah.
great. However, I need you to communicate what problem it's going to solve and I need to feel that. And then the investor will go, oh, wow, I feel it. Okay, hang on. Let me cut you that check. That way we can go forward. So
Okay.
there's, you can't just talk about what you're doing. There needs to be the emotional impact of it as well. As I say to people all the time, we all love to think that we make choices based
Mhm.
on the data and based on the specifics. But the truth is, you buy things, you take actions because you feel it. So we have to work on both of those things together. Otherwise, we kind of lose the purpose of why you're doing it, which is the value and the reason people wake up in the morning and go, yeah, I'm excited to be here.
As you can see, I go by data science Donnie, and I started when it
Yeah.
was like predictive analytics and then the data science, kind of evolution or revolution that has been taking over.
Yeah.
And storytelling ability was probably, I would say, still is today, one of the top skills that they're looking for, especially from an analytics, perspective. And it really is about just connecting the dots and really, I always joke and say, even in data, you still need to be a salesman, or a
Yeah.
salesperson, 100%, because you need to be able to not only sell yourself, but also the product, what you've done, the hard work, and most important, the justification of why this is potentially something that could be revolutionary. I love the
Yeah.
startup space because it's just tackling all these unique problems and really trying to differentiate themselves from a lot of the bigger organizations like what you're working with. And
Yeah.
most importantly, that's the future. We need these thinkers and these ideas to get, fuel to the fire.
Exactly. And to solve those problems. And at the same time, I
Yes.
need you to be able to communicate why your solution is the solution to the problem.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's connecting to that passion, that idea. I mean, I work with a lot of people who've left their job at Microsoft or left their job at
Yep,
Amazon because
yep.
they have this brilliant idea.
Oh, yeah.
You left this safety to go to where you're going to go into this unknown, and I need to know the passion behind that. A while ago, I was working at Microsoft, and there were these presentations we were doing on server load balancing,
Mhm.
and I was trying to figure out how do I make this exciting. And what was great was talking to the technicians and going, what jazzes you? Like, what do you love about this? And all of a sudden, you'd see their eyes light up, and they'd be like, "Okay, the packets are coming in," and I'm like, "That's what we're talking about. I want to see that, right? I want to see that energy where you're like, this is so cool, and this
Oh,
is
yeah.
this, and that's what we want to capture because that's what people go, whoa, wow, there's something here." So that's the thing of kind of getting that idea of that passion and that idea
Of
across
course.
about your
Especially
technology.
especially about a startup, they're not just investing in
Yeah,
the product. It's definitely the person. It's
it's you
100%. Yeah, 100%.
and
So if
your
you're not
vision.
memorable. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And most importantly, everyone's trying to get something from someone. Everyone's trying to
Yeah.
get the funding and the bits and pieces. So I think, it's great to hear that, you are helping, people with fantastic ideas and maybe not the best concepts or best practices on how to really sell themselves, or because most of them are technologists. A lot of them are just coders, and they just, and, I always love the term cave coders. They're in the back
Yeah.
room, just no light on and just kind of in the corner, but they have that mindset. But it's very, especially for, certain individuals, a lot of more introverted individuals turn to technology just as an overall. So it's very hard for them to step out of their shell, and
Yeah.
these are the people that you almost want to be able to be a leader because they don't really want to be. And sometimes the people that don't want are the most best leaders because they just have no ego. They really come to it with the greatest, I would say, mindset.
Yeah. And how you capture that the brilliance of all of these people. I mean, like you said, the cave coders that are just sitting there like there is such a level of brilliance there. However,
100%.
sometimes we got to get people to actually talking to each other. Like recently a company brought me in because one of the things they were having was it was difficult for their people weren't communicating properly with each other. They would
Mhm.
rather slack each other than look up over their laptop at the person who's facing them and say, "Hey, can I ask you this question?" So it's
Man.
that level of, okay, I need to get you comfortable with just stepping away from this and asking a
Mhm.
question and hearing something. Because if I can get your brilliant brain and the other guy's brilliant brain to work together,
100%.
now
Yeah.
we got two brilliant brains.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like we can build something fantastic if we can clarify how you'll all work together. And that's really the key.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. And it seems like, the improv mindset really does have so many different capabilities and aspects to it.
Yeah.
One of the problems that a lot of companies are facing is, how to manage toxic employees in the workplace.
God, yeah.
It seems like, there is a shift in mindset to a lot of individuals, and some people are, not jumping on the train, not,
Yeah.
they're still fighting against the current. How can leaders use communication and facilitation techniques to, defuse, some of these dynamics before, they kind of do more harm than good?
Yeah. There's a great book written by a Stanford professor. I'm blanking on his name, but it's called The No Asshole Rule. And what I love about it more than anything else is he says, sometimes that person is a high performer, your top salesperson, your top
A
coder,
lot of
whatever it
times,
is.
yeah.
However, they are toxic to the other people. And the truth is, if you lost them, you'd have a little bit of a dip, but then everyone else would take another step up and you'd be way beyond where you were. So it's that key of kind of getting the clarity of the communication. Sometimes what I find too is that there's a lot of, well, that person's difficult, so I don't talk to them. It's like, okay, why are they difficult? And we start to clarify it and actually then have those people doing an exercise, something fun, an improv exercise together.
Definitely break
And
those
they're
walls
like,
down. Yeah.
oh, man, I thought you were a dick, but you're not. You're okay. So
Yeah, you're not too
if
bad.
right, if we can repair those relationships and get people having a shared fun event, and then also give them the tools, the communication tools to be able to go, okay, so when you did this, this is what's going on. And here's these things. Tell me what's happening, or this is what I'm hearing from you. If everyone has the same shared communication structures, we can keep it from getting to the point where we go, I don't talk to Donnie because I'm not gonna deal with him. And
Mhm.
that's the point we want to stop. We want to arrest
Absolutely.
that before it happens. Once it's already happened, it takes a little while to kind of step down from it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I also think, people are always in their own minds.
Yes.
Mindset and confidence, I think, is a huge thing. Just, as your example was great, and I love the amount of detail. It is about, if it's a difficult person, the right mindset could be, okay, let's try to break this wall down. There is value in what this person does. Like you mentioned, they could be a fantastic salesperson, but, they might not be the most collaborative individual, which you kind of
Right.
see in some of those scenarios. How do you kind of turn that? How do you make it so they have the value, that they buy in? Be like, okay, I see that I could actually get something out of this. You got to spin it, you got to sell it, the right way. And those are probably the most difficult aspects, probably.
And to be open to that person being who they are. I mean, I've
Mhm,
had times
mhm.
before where it's like, no, that person's grumpy and I don't talk to them and I don't want to do this. And it's like, why are they grumpy? Every morning I walk in and say hello and they don't talk to me. It's like, well, that is their most productive time and they're trying to focus. And you're walking in and going, hi, and they're like, yeah, hi, how you doing? Like they
Yeah,
don't.
for sure.
And as a result, you take that as, oh man, they don't like me. And it's not true. It's just they're trying
Mhm.
to be productive. If you gave them a little grace and went, ah, you know what, they're working on something. It's cool. I'll catch them
For sure.
later.
Yeah,
Eh,
absolutely.
But
Go
that
with the coffee.
preconceived notion,
Here's your coffee. Here you go. Yeah.
right? Yeah, here's your coffee. Like
Good
let's
morning.
let's get moving and let's find the time later where we can actually then build a
For sure.
relationship. And that way, these moments don't become the defining piece of that relationship, which
Mhm.
then shuts down the clarity, shuts down the communication, shuts down the ability to accept and build on each other's offers, which then helps things continue to grow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also we never assume the best, as
Yeah.
humans. We never assume the best. It's always like, oh, I have a very strong face. That's why try to smile as much as humanly possible, because if I don't, I look like a murderer. So,
Right.
I really want to, yeah, I really want to try, just make it as easy for people to approach me, because I'm aware that I have a strong face. When I'm
Yeah.
thinking, deep in thought, it's almost like a do not disturb sign just rests right in front of my face.
Yeah.
So I try to smile, try to laugh, try to joke, just to try to break down the walls of preconceived notions. But we all do it, whether we realize it. I think half the battle is really just realizing that, okay, I'm never going to assume the best thing. So let me just try. What's the
Yeah.
worst that could happen? Exactly what I thought, maybe.
Well, and I worked with a team a while ago that was having difficulty with, oh man, their boss and their big boss would come up and every time they'd sit there and listen and just be shaking their head no.
Mm-mm-mm.
And they're like, they hate everything you do. They hate everything we do, and there's nothing we can do right. And it took them a while to realize after we kind of broke some things down. I'm like, have you met them? They actually have a tick, a neurological tick, where when they're listening to things, they kind of do this.
Mm-mm.
And
I've
that's
seen
just
people that do that.
the
Yeah.
individual, right?
Yeah.
However, the team was watching that happen and saying, "Oh no, they hate us. They hate us." And it's like,
Mhm.
it's not you. We like, again, if we could just give them grace and think positive intent a little bit more,
Yeah.
then we could go, "All right, well, what did you really think? Talk to me." You know?
Or just ask the question, like
Right.
just ask. So what did you think of that? Were there any suggestions that you would like to do differently? What were your kind of thoughts on the analysis?
Yes.
Where do we step forward? But they don't want the answer. That's the fear. The
Right.
fear factor is the bit that I think gets in the way. We get in our own selves way.
Or they've already decided the answer because of the visual they
All right.
saw. I mean, we
Yes.
talk all the time about the Morabian study, 1970s UCLA School of Communication, Albert Morabian. 55% of what people are responding to is the visual. And I mean, virtually, think about it, it's just within this little box. Then
Mhm.
38% is vocal variety, intonation, pausing. 7% is content.
Mhm.
So if we rely on that slide deck alone, we miss out on a large portion of what people are actually absorbing
For
from
sure.
that content. So we have
Mhm.
to focus on the other parts too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that should probably be the responsibility of the people that aren't speaking. They should probably always,
Yeah.
everybody's got a
Yes.
job. I'm
Yes.
an ex-US Army, so it's just like, okay, you monitor the CEO. Okay, you the MD. All right, let's
Right.
see what we're kind of doing, and let's feel the room. Uh,
Yeah.
Now, I am very curious. Obviously, you have used your passion and love, and I would say educational background as well, your whole life as a actor and someone who
Yeah.
enjoys being in those settings. How did you use those exercises that you've mentioned, or maybe could list some examples of some of those exercises that you've used to kind of break down some of those walls and shift some team behaviors?
Yeah. A great example. This is an exercise that I used to use for teaching people about interactions, human interactions. And I still use it in the terms of how you can kind of show up fully. I'll describe the exercise very quickly. I hand people a playing card and
Mhm.
I put it face down on their hand so they can't see it. And what they have to do is take the playing card and put it on their forehead. So they can't see their own card, but everyone else can see their card. And then I have people walk around and just talk to each other as if they all work together. And what
Mhm.
happens is that the ace, the highest card in the deck, everyone wants to talk to them. They're like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And then the king, and then the jack, queen, jack, all the
The
way down.
hierarchy.
Right. And the person who has the two, everyone's like, "Yeah, I got to go talk to someone else." And at the end, I have people line up the way people treated them. So what happens is
Mm.
people line up not knowing what their own card is. They just line up the way people treated them. And it's almost always exact as
Wow.
far as the cards. And what happens is then it starts the conversation of, okay, so why did you feel like a two? Why did you feel like a five? And the whole end of it that I use a lot for sales teams as well is when you walk in, you have an ace in your pocket.
Mhm.
And you can be an ace. You need to bring your credibility, your reliability, everything you have, bring it to the table. And if someone tries to put you down and make you a two, you can just be like, hey, I got all this experience. This is where I am. I
Mhm.
mean, I found that all the time, and I adapted this game because I do workshops for CEOs,
Mhm.
companies between 5 million, 500 million, and I would walk in and there's like 15 to 20 CEOs, and the first thing
Yeah.
they do is go, "Okay, you're an actor. What are you going to teach me?" You know,
Yeah, of course.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's this thing of, okay, I can either show up fully and go, well, I've got some exercises, some games. It's going to be really great. I'd love to know what you find from it, and just show up as confident as possible. And they're like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, okay, sure. But they're playing status with you,
Of
and they're
course.
trying to see where you're gonna fall. And
Okay.
so, right, exactly, right? And so in
100%.
a lot of ways, it's getting people to remember, who are you? What are your experiences? What are you bringing to the table? Because we all bring a wealth of things to the table, no matter what position we're in. You just got to own it.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of
Yeah.
my favorite leaders that I've ever worked for knew when to think like a two,
Yes.
knew when to humble themselves down, knew when to kind of, not be the biggest personality in the room,
Yep.
knew when to almost like rise up others and almost kind of, just, take a little bit of a step back and let the shine, shift a little bit.
Yeah.
And I hope that is also a discussion because there's a lot of aces in the world. There's a lot of people that think they're aces as well. But when you can switch from ace to jack to, 10 to 7, depending on the scenario, I
Yep.
think that would probably be a fantastic person to work for and be around, most importantly.
And when you're that ace in the room, it's really looking around and going, who needs help here?
Hmm.
Hey, that intern, tell me what you think of this. I'm going to ask you to I'm going to ask you to kind of speak because I want to know your opinion. I used to say all the time to people who were brand new at my company, I need you to tell me what you see. Because in a lot of ways, I'm wearing rose colored glasses. I don't know it. I've seen it so much, I don't even recognize the problems. I need a new voice, a new person coming in who goes, why do we do that? And
Oh,
I
yeah.
go, that's a good question. I don't know why we do that. Hang on. Let me
Yeah.
define why we do that. Or let me try and change it or do something else. But leaders, I think it's important for them to actually rely on everyone around them, and especially those new people, especially people who are the two in the room. Like that,
Oh,
those
yeah.
are the people that will help you the most.
For sure. And, I built several recruitment teams from scratch, and I loved taking
Nice.
people from all walks of life
Yeah.
because I had a lot of the air stewardesses and air stewards. I had a lot of
Yeah.
salespeople, people fresh out of, university, career athletes. And I found that I learned something from every single one of them. And that's kind of what I
Yes.
enjoyed because when what their, I guess, definition or perception of recruitment, every person had something a bit different. The way they kind of tackled the job briefing or asking and building rapport with clients and candidates. Everyone did things very differently, and I was so fascinated with that. It almost kind of took bits and pieces from everyone and things that have worked well. You got to be a sponge in life. But I found out a long time ago that it doesn't matter how many days of experience you have. There's value to be seen, and most importantly, like you said, some people have zero experience, have the craziest, kind of notions because they're just,
Yeah.
well, we do it like this, or why don't we do it like this? And I just, just like you did perfectly. You're like, don't know. Let me find out. It's like,
I don't
it's a
know. Let me
freaking
think about
question.
it.
Yeah.
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 I mean, kudos for you, Donnie, for doing that because I think a lot of people will just go, well, whatever, you're new here. I'm not going to talk about it. As opposed to looking at, I could learn something from you. And like you said, be the sponge and just gather up each thing because, yeah, there's something that every single person can teach you if you're willing to learn. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that it comes back to the improv mindset we were talking about. Are you willing to? Are you
Oh, yeah.
curious? Are you out there and going, well, I don't know. Let's find out. This will be
Oh, yeah, for
fascinating.
sure.
Let's go.
Only one way to find out, mate. And I also
Yeah.
feel like, there's gotta be a box, I call it the recruitment box, for example, you gotta have the fundamentals, gotta do the basics right. But other
Yeah.
than that, I'm not trying to make another Donnie. I'm not. I'm
Right.
not. I'm trying to turn you into you, but the best version of you with this fundamentals in mind. The rest
Yeah.
is kind of up to you. I try to, the creative freedom to be yourself and work is, I think, quite important. But you still gotta have the foundation, you still gotta follow the rules per se. But from there, go crazy. Be
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. I know.
Enjoy. I want you to come into work and have a smile on your face, mate. That's what we're here for.
I had a chance recently to actually train a number of facilitators. So I
Okay,
had like
let's see.
10, 12 facilitators and I was like leading them through and training them. Then I was like, now the key is again, I need you to do it in your voice because it has to be you figuring out how to do it. And then watching them, I'm looking at what they're doing. I'm like, "Well, that's a good idea. I'm stealing that. That's
Oh,
a good
yeah.
idea. I'm stealing it." I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I am,
Yes,
I am
man.
taking that. So it's more of a, yes, I'm leading you in this thing, but the truth is I'm actually learning as much as you are. And that's the whole point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious. You mentioned about training and development.
Yeah.
What I guess in as far as designing workshops that align with those business goals and performance gaps, because obviously that's how we get the true buy-in. But how do you kind of break that down? How do you formulate, some of those plans of how you kind of decide? I'm sure there's different ways of tackling different problems or pertaining to the audience, but I'm curious to hear some of the thought process that goes behind that.
Well, I mean, I think I think there's always a couple different thought process, and actually, based on your background in the military too. Like you get HR people or CEOs who go, "This is what we need," and then you've got people who are managers who go, "This is what we need." The truth is, I want to know what the boots on the ground say because that's the ground truth. And the ground truth might be completely different than what the expectation is. And then you're trying to match what that ground truth is to the expectation and go from there. But there's truth all the way across the spectrum straight through. So in designing, it's making sure that I've got all the voices sort of down and
Mhm.
going, what are you looking for? What's coming out of this? Because if everyone can see this as a win for them on all levels, then that's going to be a
Ultimate
plus.
buy-in.
Yep.
Yeah,
I need
absolutely.
everyone on buy-in straight across.
And do you feel that this really leads into like company cultures and fostering that, collaborative and cohesive, environments that everyone is telling us about?
I think it does. And even to the point of talking to a friend of mine recently, he was saying just all this kind of difficulty and disgruntled and all this. And it was just gathering people together and going, when did you show up at work and had the best day ever? What was that like? And then all of a sudden they just gathered all the stories of that. And the point was, is eventually they got to the point of saying, this is how I want to feel at work. And then it was great. What do we do in order to make that feeling continue? So they sort of started from the emotion and went all the way through. But in order to do that, it took people being willing to talk about what they actually enjoyed and then being willing to listen and compile it and put it together and have everyone feel like, yeah, I see myself there. I hear my voice in that comment. Everyone had to feel as if they were a part of it.
Yeah, it's very key. And
Yeah.
you very amazingly said, which I'm so glad that you did. It is not about, the leaders, the managers, the owner of the business. It is about the people that are actually on the ground floor and doing
Yeah.
the work. For us,
Yeah.
it is the recruiters, people that are actually speaking to the candidates, making the placements. And those are the individuals and their thoughts and ideas are probably the most valuable.
Yeah.
Getting those temperature checks and really just trying to, solution.
Yeah.
Nothing is perfect. Everything takes a bit of, give and take and a little bit of, your plus minus here or there. And it changes. And that's something I feel like people don't really emphasize enough that, the culture and the mindset and where the business is heading, it changes, almost daily. And that needs to also be something that I feel like people should do more talking about as far as shifting the culture, shifting of mindsets and how that grows. And that's a complete journey.
Yeah. There's something that I actually will recommend for a lot of leaders, and I call it walk the four walls. Learned it from something years and years ago from Craig Kramer's book. And it was the whole idea of, yes, I am here and I have to make these decisions. I am at this high level. However, once a week, I dedicate like an hour that I walk through and I see people in other places and go, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Great. And just make yourself known and be present. And then what happens is you're actually going to hear something you didn't expect. You're going to learn something about what's happening in their portion that you never knew. And they now feel like, wow, man, I talked to the big boss. Cool. So you've kind of built this culture of there's an openness, there's an availability, and there's listening. And really what you've done is just kind of learned more so that then you can figure out how to make that agile movement at the top.
Absolutely. And I think, for me personally, I always try to be the leader that I wanted. And that's
Yeah.
something that I come back to
That's
like
so good.
crazy. Yeah, like I want to be the boss that I always dreamed I would have had. The
Yeah.
non-micromanager, the person that, if life happens, we are understanding, we're compassionate, we're kind.
Right.
We are someone that really truly does have an open door. We have an open desk area, so I don't really have an open door, but I got an open desk for sure.
Yeah.
But people that, do kind of confide in me for not just, work related matters, but potentially, things that are affecting work.
Yeah.
That is something that I really try to embody. And every day, you try to get a little bit bigger, faster, stronger. But for me, just coming from that perspective is typically something that will never hurt. Take an ego off the table and just try to be somebody that, you wish you would have had, throughout your career. That's to me, the ultimate thing that a leader can do. Kind of
Yeah.
just be the person you always wanted and not maybe the person that is managing you. And I think that sometimes is a hard differentiator.
It's so beautiful, and I think what gets stuck, and I talk about this in my book too. I think people get stuck on the, well, I'm in charge, so I'm the leader, with a capital L, or I'm the manager with a capital M, and so I have to be this way. And it's like you don't really. I mean, one of the things you were just talking about too. I talk about check-ins, which is just that like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Or give me a word or phrase for how you're feeling. Because we all love to think we have this work-life balance, that it's two different things. But the truth is you're one person. I mean, as my friend Ivan Barone talks about it, it's more about harmony. between the two things together. What's affecting you at home is going to be affecting your work. What's going to be affecting you at work is going to affect you at home. Let's make the
100%.
whole person be a part of this organization. So those, the manager who can do what you're doing, to be perfectly honest, like, come to me, talk to me. What's happening?
Please.
Oh man, I hear that. That's huge. And then people feel the engagement and they go, all right. And then what the end results is, I mean, you can read it in every Gallup poll that there is, Microsoft 2020 report, Salesforce 2020 report. When employees are engaged that way, they
Mm.
put in extra discretionary effort and it increases the bottom line of the company by over 200%.
Oh yeah.
It
I could
hasn't,
see that.
it hasn't money. This
Yeah,
is money
exactly.
we're
Yeah.
talking about,
What's your business
you
you
know?
had back on? Yeah, exactly, mate.
Right. It's not just soft skills. Oh, look, you're doing this and you're building culture. It's actually the bottom line of your company depends upon how well people are engaged. And that's what it is.
And we do, one of the things that when I first got into recruitment that kind of terrified me, if I'm honest, was that we spent over 70, I believe it's like 75% of our time in our life working.
Yeah.
And guess what? We really don't pick much about that. We pick our spouse, we pick
Right.
what we do on our own time and who we spend time with and our families that we create. But, other than your boss and maybe a few people that you're lucky enough to maybe interview with beforehand, you're just kind of thrown into this, you
Yep.
know? So if you're not happy, if you don't feel empowered, if the culture is toxic, if you were, oversold promises, these are all things that really directly affect your peace of mind and your well-being. And honestly,
Yeah.
that's what's kept me here because I like helping. I'm always, I'm a father now, but I've always loved to help. And, now we get to, essentially, help people find their great careers and their dreams.
Yeah.
But, it's easier said than done. We can only do but so much. But if you come from a perspective of caring and trying to do the right thing at the right moment, typically it works out in my experience, at least.
I love the idea too of being willing to go, wow, if I spend 70% of my life doing this and I hate this,
I
then what
mean,
am I going to
exactly.
do? Right. And be willing to go, I hate this. It's time to do something else. It's time to shift. I think a lot of people get stuck too in that fixed mindset of, well, this is what I went to school for. And this is what I do. So that's what it then. And so
Yes,
I'm
sir.
done. No, there's all the things that you've learned, all are leading you somewhere. I don't know what it is yet. I mean,
But we're going to find
I
out.
have a master's degree in theater, and here I am doing this and wrote a book, like
Fantastic.
that's right. It just, you never know where things are leading you. You just got to follow it and just keep going. Yeah.
And have some faith, believe in yourself,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that is a big bit of it, surround
Yep.
yourself with people that believe in you, surround yourself, the people that, are going to support you. And most importantly, find some good mentors. I think, in this whole
Yes.
process that we're speaking about, I think a mentor or just having, a professional sounding board is so crucial, especially as you grow your career. That, I know some people harp on it, but I think it's something that really doesn't get, spoken about enough. Is just the power of your professional network and just the people you
Yes.
have around you.
Being able to just run a problem across people, like, hey, there's what's going on, or what's this? What do you think? What's ideas? Any of those pieces, or even if they just go, wow, that sucks. Great, thank you. Anything to get some kind of feedback from it is just going to help you to either process it yourself or find a new direction and keep going. But yeah, you're right. Mentors,
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
I'm glad to
Rely
hear
on
it.
the people around you.
Yeah, everyone, and you create that,
Yeah,
you ultimately do become the people you're around. So surround yourself with some great people who you want to be like, and
yeah,
of course, from there, who knows what can happen.
yeah.
But I would love for you, this has been such a great conversation. So I really want to thank you first and foremost. But,
Keep talking for
what
an
are,
hour. What are you kidding me?
yeah,
Keep
man,
going.
absolutely. I love it. Now, I would love to hear, a few kernels of gold or some nuggets of information that maybe you would love for, let's say, someone that is a leader,
Yeah,
that, is quite passionate about, the leader they would like to become and would love to
yeah,
be, like I mentioned, maybe the leader that they wish they always had. What are some
yeah.
advice or maybe some practices that you could, share with the audience?
The biggest thing, which is why I kind of wrote the book that I wrote, because I found that after I was working with people, the biggest issue that people were running up against was listening. How do
Hmm.
I, how do I really show up listening? And so I put in just exercises. I mean, that's kind of the whole idea on the book was I didn't want it to be something that you just kind of read and go, yeah, okay, great, whatever. I needed it to be where there's actually part 3 of the book is here's the exercise for you to do with your team. Now, What was it like? Here's a checklist. Go through it and go, what worked for you? What didn't work for you? And one of the exercises that I recommend for people all the time is just the reflective listening clarity. Hey, this is what I heard you saying. Tell me if that's correct. Yes or no?
Mm.
Based on what you said, it sounds to me like this is important to you. Tell me if I'm hearing that correctly. Wow, based on what you said, here's this or here's this. Would you like to find the next direction or just thank you for telling me? Like, there's just that ability to listen, be present, be available with someone, and then reflect back what you heard. And I
Mhm.
think that step alone is huge for leaders. If you're just able to listen and then clarify in order to make sure that you heard what you heard, that solves a lot of problems because half the time we think we know what it was and we head off in this direction. And it
Mhm.
should have been this way. And now you've got wasted time, resource, and energy. So
And
just clarifying.
frustrations.
Yeah, exactly. Right. This is what I heard. Tell me if that's correct. No, it's not. Great. Tell me again. Just clarifying the communication first and foremost. And then building that into a habit. So people start to get into the habit of going like, oh, this is what I'm hearing. Tell me if that's right. Great. So let's do this and let's do this. Like we actually just start to build it into who they are as an organization. For me, that's the biggest thing. If you can clarify what you're thinking and keep out of the preconceived notion in your head, then that changes it. In general, and
Sure.
I'm a brain geek as well, we tend to listen and we listen for data points and then we draw through lines between them to
Mm.
create story or narrative. So the minute we hear something, we immediately go from what is the medial prefrontal cortex to the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. We're categorizing against what we know and we're thinking about it. And as we're doing that, we're missing the new information.
Oh, yeah.
So this ability to go, okay, I heard you. This is what I heard you say. Is that correct? We're disconnecting that part of your brain that goes, oh, I know about this and this is going to be great and we could do this, so that now you could just be present.
That is the power of being on the same page right there, mate. That's what I call that. The power of
Yes.
just being on the same page, same sheet of music, any analogy
Yes.
you would like. But it is so amazing when you can alleviate any of the stress and time wasted and just absolutely, just hit the ground running. And that is a hard lesson I learned, to be honest,
Yeah. Oh, me
because
too. Me
yeah,
too.
yeah.
You know,
Because my brain goes a million miles an hour. So that's why,
right.
if you saw me, sometimes I take notes to keep myself on track, and I do much better at, coping mechanisms now. But that one hurt a little bit. And also I'm happy I'm a little bit, out of the light or out of the dark for that one. But,
Yeah.
it's a hard lesson to learn for some people, and you are not wrong. That is fantastic advice to all that are listening, because you always cause yourself a lot less heartache and stress that way.
You certainly will. And then on the other side, a little bit of what we were talking about earlier of that culture piece, that person that you said, this is what I heard. Is that correct? And they're like, yeah. They then have that feeling of like, you get me, man. You were
Mhm.
here. You heard me. And now they feel like, wow, this person really cares. And so you've built a relationship, you've built investment, and you've gotten that person, engaged with what's going on. So it does all that. It helps you to clarify, gets on the same page, engages the other person. They feel invested. They start to get engaged in you. It's a magic key in so many
Yeah, for
ways.
sure. Yeah, and it's not the hardest of things to do as
No.
well, which is the most amazing part to me. It is just about, listening a little bit, okay, maybe taking a little bit of notes on the side for myself, or people like
Yep.
myself that have a ton of energy and the mind's going all the time. This is
Yep.
what I have. Just let me know if I'm on the right page here, and just that little bit of, question is like, oh, wow, not only did he listen, he actually took notes. And then on top of that, he also asked me if his notes were correct and he was on the same page. So
Right.
that was, you can't get more genuine than that. And, that's what people want. They don't want to feel, like something is, you know, fake, something that is just forced to be done. They want something that's genuine, let's do something together.
Yeah. Or like, I'm waiting for your lips to stop moving. That way I can talk about my thing, which is what,
Yeah.
what a lot of people are like, when are they going to stop? Okay. Okay. Here's my idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other one on that one that sometimes getting people to just focus so that they
Mhm.
can be on the same page is
Mhm.
I will tell them little things like just put your feet flat on the ground. And what happens is all of a sudden they think about, oh, wow, I'm not listening. Let me put my feet on the ground. And now all of a sudden they are. So it's
Mhm.
little physical things that will help them to re-engage and then be present again for the other person. Finding those little tiny keys or sort of the thing I love, love, love when I'm working with people.
And remind me, what is the title of your book?
Yeah. Listening without agenda.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure we ended on that note for
Oh,
you, my
yeah.
friend, because I wanted to put that little plug in for you. But
Oh,
there's a
thank
few
you. Thank you.
things we have here, just in regards to creating cultures, being good leaders and good people, and most importantly, good employees, in the organization. The power of listening and, not only listening, but also clarifying what you heard is actually what the person was saying, and as well as some tips and tricks of how you can, kind of get yourself in the right mindset as you are, encounter these types of meetings and these types of scenarios, just to be, your most genuine self. And
Yeah.
it has very exciting to me to hear people talk about leadership and, building company cultures, because, as I mentioned earlier with that statistic, we spend a lot of time at work. And if we are happy, if we feel like we are excited to come in every day, the quality of someone's life just goes through the roof. And then life
Yeah.
expectancy, everything touches this. So, please, if you are a leader, if you want to be a leader, get informed. Try to put
Yeah.
yourself in the people's shoes that you are leading. And most importantly, try to be yourself. And most of the
Yes.
time, if you do that, I think you'll be headed in the right direction.
Bring your authenticity in everything you can do. I wanna make one other comment. You talked about mentors, and I know you had Sabina on your podcast a little while ago, and she she's fantastic, and I have to say she has been an incredible supporter for me, and I just again, like, as people that you look up to and you go, "Wow, cool." She's amazing. So, I just wanna
That's in
plug
good
for her.
company. Oh, 100%. No, you are in good
Yeah.
company, my friend. I can only imagine some of the discussions you all have together.
Oh,
If we
she's
could just put a little microphone in the middle of that one, I think we have some gold there. But yes, and to be honest, this is why we do it. The
yeah.
introduction network, and really just finding people with similar mindsets and want to do something great together. Andrew, thank you so much for your time. It was an absolute blast. I'm 100% rooting for you, and I look forward to continuing this relationship together, mate.
Thank you, Donnie. This was amazing. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the STEM Career Coach with Donnie McClary. If you enjoyed today's episode, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more inspiring stories and actionable tips. Catch you next time.